let's get into some news from over the weekend. LSU. So it looked as though, based on memes and social media, that Missouri defensive coordinator Blake Baker was going to be sticking around, right? He hit us with that Wolf of Wall Street. I'm back. And he's gone. LSU announces that Blake Baker will be the new defensive coordinator there. But I'm going to throw it to you first. You are in Nashville, also on the road, but you are at the coaches convention. So I don't know if you've gotten any reaction from other coaches there or just your own thoughts on LSU. As remember, we've got just total clearing of the house of the defensive side. Offense, you're reworking the staff as well as you lose Mike Denbrock to Notre Dame. What do you make of LSU's hire here before we get to their big recruiting win over the weekend as well?
Yeah, so convention's been pretty good so far. Seeing a lot of coaches. There's a lot of complaining about the portal and the portal windows and just how insane the calendar is. And a lot of people are parroting Lane Kiffin's phrase about, I can't believe we do free agency during the season, right? Like the NFL would not do free agency during their playoffs. But we do, because this is the sport that academics matters. So we have to follow the academic calendar. All right. So I think Baker's a good get for LSU. I also, transparency, I thought Matt House was going to be a good get, and that did not work out. I mean, a lot of their personnel decisions they made on the defensive side ended up being a disaster. They took 4 corners in the portal, and none were playing by Halloween. Yeah, I think a lot of us, like one of our biggest plays of the year was Bama to smoke LSU, because like, who's going to play for LSU in that game? So it's a little bit hard for me to separate coaching versus personnel. But at a certain point, if you have not had success, your message starts to ring hollow, even if it's not your fault. And I don't really know how to separate some of the personnel stuff LSU has had, but they also didn't look very well coached. So maybe that is on Matt House. But I think some fresh ideas, kind of new blood there. Baker's a really, really aggressive guy. I think you'll see number 4 coming off the edge an awful lot for them, and they'll just probably simplify it and have him go get the passer if they can, and worry about what he plays in the NFL when he makes it to the NFL. And for Missouri, I think it sucks. Like, they were making a big deal about retaining Baker. However, I will note Missouri has a lot of young coaches on that staff who have done a nice job with player development, they really hit it hard on the recruiting trail. It's not just NIL for Missouri, right? It's not just, hey, we're buying everybody. Like, yeah, their NIL, their act is together, so to speak, in NIL, but they also have a young, engaging coaching staff that works their butts off in recruiting, and I think it's done a pretty good job. And I think not all those guys are leaving with Baker to go to LSU. So I think Missouri will probably be okay. And if you're an LSU fan, you have to hope that they can kind of port over some of that stuff that he did for Missouri.
I think it's a good hire for LSU. It's also one of those things to me, and I tweeted this when the news broke, that LSU's defense was so bad last year that Blake Baker is now the highest paid coordinator in the country. And it's nothing against Blake Baker, who I think is a good coach. It's just, if you were to just go, who's the highest paid coordinator in college football? Blake Baker would probably not be in the first 20, 25 names that anybody mentioned, but that's the situation here, because that's what LSU obviously feels like it needs to do. Yeah, but you were just, I think it's a good hire for LSU. I think he's a good coordinator, but I don't think Mizzou's in any real trouble, because I do think that is a very good coaching staff, and they'll probably promote from within, and they'll be okay.
Do we have any rock star defensive coordinators in college football right now?
Oklahoma made an interesting hire. They took the guy, the 29-year-old from Jacksonville State, who I thought did a much better job than I was anticipating this year. I really thought Jacksonville State's defensive personnel was not great. They were not a good defense in the FCS. I was anticipating them playing pretty poor defense, and I had to adjust my numbers quickly on them after the first couple weeks. And I know they played UTEP to start the season. Who did they play week 2? I know they played UTEP in the opener, but they had some pretty good defensive performances. And so Brent Venables, a guy who I think has done a nice job identifying defensive coaches over the years, picked him out. And that was kind of, it's like, okay, I'm taking note of that 29-year-old defensive coordinator here.
He's from like the Venables tree though, right? Like aren't they familiar with him?
Yeah.
I think Minter at Michigan is another good one.
Jesse Minter. That probably came to mind. I mean, you got to give Glenn Schumann probably a note, right? Or at least a tip of the cap. There are times
there's only one Phil Parker.
There we go.
I mean, there's only one, because all these schools have top tier talent. Like it's a interesting coincidence that some of the teams with the better athletes have the best defensive coordinators. It's kind of funny how that works sometimes. When you mentioned Harold Perkins, like remember when they decided to move him? And my thought at the time, I think we even discussed it on here, was, well, they must be deep at edge if they're going to move Harold Perkins to back, into linebacker. And maybe there was a philosophical difference of why they moved him back, and clearly didn't get the production that we thought after watching the Arkansas game last year. That was the game he took over single-handedly, right? And it was like, oh, this could be the next Will Anderson Jr. type player. And granted, he's not the same size, but I mean, the coordinator hires are great. I think they matter more on offense, but I think in both sides of the football, it's more about the Jimmies and the Joes than the X's and O's always.
What's it? Height, weight, speed. That's our like. How are we going to judge a defense? Who you got out there? Yeah. All right, keeping it with LSU. Number one player in the 2025 cycle, Bryce Underwood, adds to a group for the Tigers that here, and again, very, very early stages of the process, kind of stocked with some offensive talent. But who are we looking at in Bryce Underwood? What kind of prospect is this, and what do you make of the this LSU positive momentum?
Sure. So a true national recruitment here by LSU beat out a lot of top tier programs for the number one player in the country. Underwood's a quarterback, big time tools, arm and legs, can make things happen from the pocket, but also a real danger when he's out of the pocket. The level of athleticism here is enough to where I think genuinely he would be a D1 recruit. Maybe not like a super high level Power 5 guy, but if he wanted to play another position even. So LSU's getting a guy who can be a real threat if you don't account for him with your defensive structure, much like Jaden Daniels was, but who I think also has real upside long-term as a passer. Everybody in the country liked this kid. And I mean, look, it's super early. You can be number one in the country and, finish like 150th in the country. It's super early. And we really do try to monitor what happens during a senior season a lot, because I think that's probably the most important season to evaluate, because everybody matures physically and emotionally and just kind of mentally on different timelines, and everybody's different ages too. So we'll be monitoring it, but right now, and even if he doesn't finish number one, this is a serious gift for them. Like, he has real ability.
Who led the charge here? Because remember, we haven't had Mike Denbrock left on December 22nd. That offensive coordinator position, as far as I know, has not been officially filled. So is this Brian Kelly leading the charge, or who else on that staff is it?
I mean, seriously, it is about the offers, don't you think? I mean,
assistant coach, name, image, and likeness.
No, their quarterback coach Joe Sloan is kind of rapidly getting a reputation, and I think he should. By the way, I was not high on Jaden Daniels entering the season. We saw his receivers kind of I can't really say that what the word I want to use here, complaining to him about missing them when they were open down the field, right? Turning touchdowns in, like, Daniels in 22 turned touchdowns into first downs, or he wouldn't pull the trigger, right? And like, you could see it. Neighbors and who was the other guy they had? And Thomas and no, the guy who's in the NFL now.
Ute.
Yes. They were stomping, man. They're like, damn it, Jaden, throw the ball. Like, what are you doing? We're open. And this year he's like, oh, I'm going to pull the trigger. And guess what? I'm super accurate when I pull the trigger. That's one of the biggest jumps that I've seen in a quarterback. And I think Joe Sloan does deserve some credit for that. So, LSU's they're doing well in high school recruiting.
Good sign moving forward for LSU. Again, a program we've got our eyes on as we look at the new expanded SEC, trying to figure out where they fit heading into 2024.